It's going too long, man. SamHein goes into the Dolans sometimes appeared as impish creatures, sometimes headless men on horses who carried their heads, riding flame-eyed horses. That reminds me of a Ghost Rider. Their appearance was a death omen to anyone who encountered them. A group of hunters known as Slaw or Fairy Host might also hunt SamHein and kidnap people. Might also hunt SamHein or Sowen, right? Going back to Sowen. That's really how you say it. And kidnap people similar are the Slaw, who would come from the west to enter houses and steal souls. Myth of SamHein. One of the most popular SamHein stories told during the festival was the Second Battle of Mag Terrier. Yeah, and that's where you get all that weird shit like Lord of the Rings bullshit and stuff like that, the elves and shit like that. That you see today with these coming up holidays, Halloween and Christmas and Valentine's Day. That's all comes from over there, near the bottomless pit area, England there, Rome, Italy, down near their area, European nations, NATO today. Which we ain't elves. We don't believe in elves. We don't believe in that shit. We might look like elves. We don't believe in elf in that. All that bullshit, man. Right? Word elf comes up a lot. Been seeing it a lot lately. Yeah, something there. Something right there. Yeah. But anyway, going on to this. Children play games to entertain the dead, while adults would update the dead on the past year's news. Way off. Sounds familiar to Issachar's Day of the Dead. This is Christian SamHein, or Sowen. This is as Christianity gained a foothold in pagan communities, church leaders attempted to reframe SamHein as a Christian celebration. The first attempt was by Pope Boniface in the 5th century. He removed the celebration to May 13th and specified it as a day of celebrating saints and martyrs. The fire festivals of October and November, however, did not end with this decree. Yeah, because the majority of those people there, they didn't want to. Just like today, certain people who are atheists and hate the scriptures and all that, and they look like Edomites. A lot of those are the same Celtics back then that weren't trying to keep the Christian belief system of that day, that era. Just like today, it's like the minority, which would be us, who wouldn't keep their wicked holidays. See how it's reversed now? Now they can keep their wicked holidays, but we gotta be the minority group that doesn't want to keep their holidays. Back then, we were the ones in power. That's why I believe a lot of them were the elect, and we were reincarnated. We had the power over them. They forced them to keep our. In a lot of cases, we didn't force them to death. Some of us were that merciful. Pope Gregory removed the celebration back to the time in the 9th century. Pope Gregory moved the celebration back to the time of the fire festivals and declared it All Saints' Day on November 1st. All Souls' Day would follow on November 2nd. SamHein merges with Halloween. Neither new so they always would keep it. They always had some pagan remnants of tribes there that would always keep their traditional Samhain or SamHein. This one reads this title is subheading the SamHein merges with Halloween. Neither new holiday did away with the pagan aspects of the celebration on October 31st. So really, it never got eradicated because it wasn't the time yet. Ultimately, when Yahushua comes, he's going to restore the kingdom back, the whole world back to. It's going to be great grand reformation, righteous reformation that's going to happen. And going to Revelation 21 and verse 2. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven. This is going to be Yahushua coming down with his elect on the ships, the remnant of Israel, 1/3, including the governing body, the 144,000. And I, John the Revelator here, saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, which hasn't happened yet. Because when the new kingdom, New Jerusalem comes, which is the new covenant, the emergence of the start, the beginning of the new covenant, when that comes, when it enters into the world, you're not going to have it, the Kaaba stone over there that's in Mecca and Syria over there. You're not going to have the dome of the rock over there that's in Israel, where they say the first and second temple stood once upon a time. All right, you're not going to have any of that. You're not going to have any of these other idols. You're not going to have that big ass Buddha statue over there in China. The first thing we're going to do when we get to the kingdom is we're going to go everywhere and destroy all these idols and statues and all of them. I myself personally want to destroy one of the Yahushua destroy that specifically that dome of the rock over there that's in where they say the first and second temple used to be. Because that offended me. Meditating on that the other day, offended me very much. Kind of like Ezra's when he was lying down in his bed one day in Babylon, or where he was, and over there in the Persian Empire at that time, and it troubled him. His thoughts troubled him, and that's where where Uriel has to come for Ezra with the specific questions of why Israel is the bottom, and why is these heathens above Israel? Why don't we possess the inheritance, right? Even though Babylon is more wicked than how we were. And I even said that to the Lord. Why is it that these fucking heathens can have their idols now? They have their idols over there. I complained to the Lord, man. I got pissed off, and it pissed me off, bro. When I was like, man, basically, how can they have that shit over there? When are we gonna have our shit? Not shit, but our stuff. Yeah, so it says here, John says, prepared as he saw New Jerusalem coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. Yeah, and the bride goes into a bride, and when you go into ancient traditions, that bride was always supposed to be a virgin. If that woman you decided to take as a wife wasn't a virgin, in Hebrew custom tradition, that would have been something that would have been shamed upon. So you wouldn't even have wanted to hold a high celebration for that. You wouldn't even have pronounced that or held a wedding feast for that, because if that woman wasn't a virgin, going back to ancient Hebrew customs, if that woman you decided wasn't a virgin, she already had a man, but her man could have died already, you wouldn't have held a huge, large wedding feast. Which back in that time, a marriage would have just been the wedding feast, and after that, it would have been the sex afterwards. But yeah, sex would have really been considered the marriage. The wedding ceremony is exactly what it's titled, the ceremony. It would have just been considered ceremony. But the marriage, when you go into the word marriage, it really means contract, which would have been you popping her, having sex with her. Now she's yours, and she's gonna have to be yours forever. That's the contract. There's no paperwork behind it or nothing like that. The law and his law in that time and that place in the ancient Hebrew land, ancient Israel, that would have been the contract. That was the law of her to never go outside from your bed unto another man. That would have been the contract. And if she was to break that contract, she would have been stoned to death. That's what the contract would have been. No paperwork required. And that would keep a lot of marriages in Israel. I wonder why Israel doesn't allow us to command that law. bestowed that law upon us. I wonder why. Because he's the devil, and ultimately it's our curse. It's our punishment. So now the Lord stripped that away from us. And our woman, our whores, scripture said that would happen. It's like getting a bit off topic, but I'm gonna give thy daughters into KGB. Okay, I will not punish. I will not punish the daughters when they commit whoredom. Yeah, Isaiah 4:14. I will not punish your daughters when they turn to prostitution. The KJV is better. I will not punish your daughters when they commit whoredom, nor your spouses when they commit adultery, for themselves are separated with whores, and they sacrifice with harlots. Therefore the people that doth not understand shall fall. Because back in this time, Israel, Hosea here was prophesying unto northern kingdom back in this time, and it also mentions how Judah would later on do the same thing. You had women that were committing adultery, and they weren't putting them to death, and then those same women would go and partake in the idol worship that they would later do. Their wicked high priests that they set up that weren't Levites for the idol worship would partake in hold sacrifices. They would hold, and the whores would later go there, and they wouldn't be put to death. And basically, it's like you're guilty by association at that point. So the Lord looked at that as a great offense, just as I would. And I wasn't the one who gave Israel their laws. Knowing the truth now, I would be offended by that, by my people doing that, seeing them do that. And I'm not the Most High. I didn't give them. I'm not the one who gave them the laws or created the laws. And even I would be offended by that. So how much more the Lord? Y'all gotta stop thinking the Lord as someone who doesn't have feelings and emotions and doesn't do anything. So yeah, man, I'm gonna get this one here. I got a bit more here. I gotta finish in here. Slovakia. SamHein murders of Halloween. Neither new holiday did away with pagan aspects of the celebration, because ultimately it wasn't the time for that. October 31st became known as All Hallows Eve, or Halloween. So basically, that name just means All Hallows Eve. But before All Saints Day, that look up Pope Gregory the IV once again. And now in this particular date that they would hold, we know they were pagans at the time. Our people were still holding certain pagan shit. At this time, they might have ate pork and thought that they were allowed to eat pork, but as far as other laws, they might have, or as far as we're thinking that they was sincere, they might have been off, but they might have been not as off as far as knowing that they weren't supposed to do that and incorporating pagan shit into it, like Constantine the First did. Like once again, certain kings, pagan Christian kings of the Dark Ages might have been sincere. Once again, as far as I know, King James was the only one that might have actually kept the laws of not, as far as not eating pork. But he didn't say the true name, so it technically would have been still pagan to a certain degree. As far as how hardcore we believe in the name, and in this time today. Because we received the true name now in this time today. It was prophesied that we wouldn't say the true name in that time, but later on in our captivity we would end up getting revealed unto us the true name. So just edifying, just clearing that up. It says here, so yeah, the word Hallows Eve actually was going into how, going back to Pope Gregory the IV, who ruled the papacy around this time, the 8th century. Hallows Eve actually was going into Halloween, a hollow evening, a holy evening, which were basically is where they would fast. That's what Halloween ultimately goes into. Okay, so basically that name, even Halloween, that name really isn't the origins and etymology of that word in itself isn't pagan at all. The ween there goes into a broken version of the word Eve, English broken version of the word to say Eve. Ween, which or Hollow, it goes into holy, Hollow Eve. Going back to Pope Gregory the Fourth, who started it, he's the one who really took it serious. After Pope Gregory the Third, Pope Gregory the Fourth took it on another level and decided to have October 31st. I think it was November 1st, to replace that. To replace a SamHein or SamHein with Hallows Eve. The reason why he chose that date was to start getting new converts, to forget that pagan shit and start getting converted into the Christian Reformation he was trying to push heavily. The same thing that Josiah did. I think of Josiah basically, and how basically his Reformation he did. First off, by eliminating, his was more hardcore by completely killing the Baal priests. So yeah, so really the word Halloween, that's the background behind the word of Halloween. But today it's just like Christmas is given. Yeah, it says in contain, because going back, that's why we call that period the pagan Christian period. The pagan Roman Empire, you go into it, because basically they still call themselves Romans. The Byzantines didn't call themselves Byzantines, they called themselves Romans. But that's because that's who they believed they were going back to. They didn't believe they were Hebrews, because ultimately Constantine I, you can thank him for that. That's why I believe he could be Jeroboam. He ultimately did that to erase them being Hebrews from their minds. Says it contained much of the traditional pagan practices before being adopted in the 19th century America through Irish immigrants bringing their traditions across the ocean. Ultimately, I'm not saying all this to brag and boast of my historical knowledge. This is just something that I didn't know when I first came into this truth that I wanted to know. So to the newer ones coming in, I want to impart to you my knowledge and my labor unto thee. Contained much of the traditional pagan practices before being adopted in the 19th century America. Yes, so later on they would migrate over here. A lot of them Irish and those that originated in what was it called again? Where this whole pagan holiday started. Gaelic area, that would have been the ancient Celts. Gaelic. Yeah, this would have been where it all started here. Pulling up a map of where the Gaelics would have resided in, which they, when I looked it up in Google, they said near northern Ireland, Britain. Yeah, that's right here, that green area there on the screen here. Yeah, that's where King James was later on, in that same, later on, but his empire, his kingdom would have been very close to that area there. Yeah, where the UK, Ireland, Northern France is here. Basically, where the elites today, the wicked elites, Rothschilds, have their headquarters, where they reside in today. Yeah, no wonder that thing, Halloween ended up getting more popularized than pagan. That's why. Because the ones that ruled, the wicked came back and they ended up reversing all the righteous reformation that some of our people, Jakes, were trying to replace SamHein with Christian Reformation. Even though, don't get me wrong, some of it was, a lot of it was still, they still weren't, didn't have the complete breath in them, but still. Okay, so going back to this, So yeah, the Gaelics there would have been near Ireland. UK, Northern France. Ireland, UK, Northern France. Neither new holiday did away with the pagan aspects of the celebration. On October 31st, it became known as Hallows Eve or Halloween and contained much of the traditional pagan practices before being adopted in the 19th century America through Irish immigrants bringing their traditions across the ocean. Trick-or-treating is said to have been derived from ancient Irish and Scotland practices in the nights leading up to SamHein or SamHein. In Ireland, mumming was the practice of putting on costumes, going door to door, and singing songs to the dead. Cakes were given as payment. Once again, that's something that the Pope Gregory the Fourth especially wouldn't have allowed. He was trying to reform that and get rid of that. Even though you can argue, well, why did he choose the same date to put it in as? Because that was because he was trying to reform it and get the old ways out of those tribal peoples that loved Halloween mind from that to be reformed to the Christian ideology he was trying to push upon them and their philosophy beliefs. Halloween pranks also have a tradition in Samhain, though in the ancient celebration, tricks were typically blamed on fairies.